And what I would like to explore with you for this 18 minutes or so that we have is to think about this place that we belong as having another world in it. A world that when you step outside this room and in the ground beneath your feet, in the surrounding areas, and when you cross the bridges, it's something that is known to you because you're here and because you're a part of it, and we're all a part of it. But it's also something very unknown. And so I would like to bring you somewhere into a bit of a hybrid of an imaginary space, reconsidering a very deep ancestral history of this land, and also to think about it in terms of what it means, what this could mean, what this could teach you. And I'd like to bring you through a very specific case of this. I was thinking about this idea of the Chester River and thinking about where we belong and thinking about the other, the known and the unknown, and how we relate to this. And started to think about what if we could, in this contemporary time, from our own knowledge, in our own imaginations to some degree, start to regenerate a society and a people who were lost over 200 years ago, the Wicomiss people, who were the native people of this land, who lived right on the banks of this river, went up and down the tributaries, were all through the fields and forests in this very space that you call home. And what if we could think about it, not in terms of reconstructing, I'm not going to go, usually, as a historian, I would try to take you through very specific dates, times, think about like archaeology or think about missionary reports, but I don't want to do that today. So I'm doing something today that's a little bit different, but it's actually what motivates me to try to find what lies inside of the land. Why do we want to find out this history of Native people and how we relate to it? It also relates, I think, something very personal for me, and perhaps for you. There's a very interesting quote that I think about from a friend and colleague of mine who's a Hopi sociologist named Angela Gonzalez. And she says that being an Indian is not being part something, it's being part of something. And I think that that's true for not just Native American people, but also as a human being, that to be a human being is to be part of something. And we've heard that theme run through many of these talks this morning. So regenerating a Wicomiss society in the 21st century. I first became interested in looking for what we can't really see, but what we can try to see, because I grew up in the native space of Manhattan Island. I grew up in Lower Manhattan. My father was a sailor. He was a merchant marine, and he was from the Chesapeake Bay, a Piscataway Indian. And he met my mother, who's from another tribe, my Jewish mother, in 1961 in Washington Square Park. And so here he is on the Hudson, sometimes it's like, oh, look at this native man, he's got this big like vista behind him. That's the Hudson River, and that's Hoboken. So thinking about this, I was always trying to find out, because he did teach these values. Actually, he's a real urban person, and I'm a very urban person too. But what is your relationship to this place? What's in this land? No matter where you go, no matter where you are, whether you're in D.C. or on the Chester or out in the wilderness or the so-called wilderness, you have a relationship to this space. And so I had to use my imagination to try to find it at first, trying to imagine that. So when we think about Native Americans, I just want to clear the air here for a minute. First thing, flash, free association. what leaps to your mind? Tipis. Tipis and maybe Tonto. It's been leaping to Johnny Depp's mind, and it will be coming to a theater near you, another rendition of The Lone Ranger in Tonto very soon. So it's something in our popular imagination. Tipis are really cool. They're really great, but there were no tipis here whatsoever. And actually, even though I've been personally asked this, I never lived in a teepee in my life. When I was a kid and people would find out that I was Native American, because it's not exactly something you would guess by looking at me, people would ask if I lived in a teepee in Central Park, and no, I didn't. But, you know, is this a kind of a landscape or a place or a way of living that maybe leaps to your mind when you think about Native Americans? This is Cahokia, an indigenous metropolis that was existing in Missouri from 600 to 1400 AD. In the year 1250, it had a population that was larger than London at the same time, 15,000 people. So let's think about this. I mean, Missouri, other native metropolises in places that are a little bit closer to home here, Ohio, Georgia. We can go a lot closer to this land. So I just wanted to break up the stereotype a little bit. Now, Cahokia managed to screw itself up on its own terms. It didn't do this with the English colonists. It didn't do it because of any conquest. It was because the society became unsustainable. So we have many people that we know that on this landscape, if you ask where are Native people now, on the Eastern Shore, there are people who are descendant communities, but for the most part, a lot of this land is bereft of Native people. You know, where is everybody? I don't want you to get the picture that there are no Native people left in Maryland. Here's a photo of Governor O'Malley, finally in his wisdom, decided to recognize the Piscataway people who were from the Western Shore just this January in 2012. So this is a huge year. So there is survival, and when I talk about the Wicomiss, I don't want you to think that everybody is gone. However, if we look at this map that was created by John Smith in 1608, you can really see, basically this is a whole picture of the Chesapeake Bay, and every little hamlet, every river, every tributary, there are towns and villages and hamlets full of Native people, including the Wicomiss, who were there reported as the Ozani people, and they were there for, oh my gosh, just, thousands of years. I mean, 11,000 years, their society developed, it changed, it was created out of this very landscape. So it was a very different kind of society, one that rises right up from the rivers, right up from the cornfields, from the forests. This land was 95% old growth forest. The rivers were deep and clear. They were not silted in. So that's what John Smith saw. It doesn't mean that people weren't living in the landscape and changing it. It doesn't mean that this was a utopian society. It wasn't. I'm sure people got into horrible fights. There were wars. There were all the things. We're all human. However, there was a difference in the treatment of the land. The Wicomiss people, it's one of the most tragic stories in probably U.S. history. The English waged war upon them and ended up entirely annihilating the Wicomiss people in 1669. Any of the survivors were sold into slavery and sent to Barbados. So I wanted to just, to think about that. Think about that for a second. But also to remember that we don't only think about people and societies or individuals or people that we've lost by their cause of death. What would they have to teach us? What would they have to say to us? How could we adapt some of their ideas into the way we live now? What the Wicomiss could teach there are a number of basic ideas in their ways of life, in the philosophies that we know about from them and their related people, ideas about relatedness, reciprocity, responsibility, imbalance. So I would call these the 3 R's and the B's. This is a 3 R's and a B. It's like our rhythms and maybe our blue, but these are the pieces that really can frame so much of the way that they shape society. We've kind of heard a little bit about Native people today in terms of their material culture or their agriculture, but let's talk about the social. Thinking about family. Family was truly extended. Family was related through clans that came through the mother. Family wasn't only a human family, but you could be descended from turtles, from beavers, from eels, from trees, from rocks, from stars, from ants. There's this concept that we're all related. And actually in the living Nanticoke Lenape people, who are just right over a little bit up in Delaware, and some of them moved to southern New Jersey, they still keep this idea on their seal. We're all related. And it's very interesting because although this was considered to be a bizarre kind of primitive backwards concept, in fact, this idea, are we not finding out that we are descended from the rock? Are we not related to somehow a butterfly? I found out recently in the Natural History's Human Origins Hall that we share 60% of our DNA with a banana. You know, there's something to be said for living on the land and really paying attention to it for a long time. Other ideas, urban planning. You know, you have this idea, here's what a Wicomiss village might have looked like. You can see people are living together. They're all related. They're living in those extended family groups that run through their mother, their clan relatedness. And so that they have an idea that in urban planning, all of the people that are living in your longhouse, they're all your relatives. They're actually all your brothers and sisters and cousins and aunts and grandmas. And, you know, if a guy has a midlife crisis and he leaves, it's okay. All your aunties are there. So the idea is with urban planning, thinking about co-housing, you know, it's a very indigenous kind of a concept. And the other day I was walking through my neighborhood and I was thinking, what would happen I live in Tacoma Park and we have, you know, big city blocks, but all of our houses, just like here, you know, in different places, your door faces out to the street. Everybody faces out away from each other. What if we switched our houses around and our doors open in on each other and we could share that common space? I was talking about this with my kids, and they were like, Mom, that's nuts. You know, what about my backyard? And everybody play with my stuff. But I just thought, you know, that would be a concept of responsibility and balance and reciprocity. I'll do something for you, you do something for me, and we're always going to restore it. And what if, you know, neighbors get into arguments? There's problems in our neighborhoods. There's problems in our community. What about criminal justice? The idea of criminal justice in a Wicomiss term was restorative. You take something, you give it back. Even if you kill somebody, you can't give back the life of the person that was lost, but you better go and you better chop the wood for those people. You better hunt for those people. You better help take care of their children. What if we started to think about that as a way of dealing with people who have violated the norms of the society? And actually, in a way, what they did with the teenage boys, and I think this would be like a great concept just having gone through high school with my son, they would take the boys out in a group, send them out in the woods for 3 months with a bunch of tough old guys. Believe me, I think any sorts of infractions might be drained right out of them. The ideas of war. For us as a nation that's been at war for many years now, to think about that. This is an image of Powhatan, actually in Virginia, and his council. You'll see there's a row of men, there's a row of women. People had to consult with the clan mothers, like this is a contemporary clan mother who just passed away, Audrey Shenandoah, you would have to ask a council of mothers, a council of women, whether or not it was time to go to war. Because women and children are the most affected. It's your sons, it's your fields that are going to be destroyed. It's your impact on the generations. So there's a wisdom in this. The idea of education, lifelong and experiential, holistic education. You could actually even change your name at different points in your life, depending on what you learned. The same person could start with one name and end up with multiple names based on their achievements. So that's an integrated idea of education into your individual self. Also immigration. I was thinking about immigration and thinking about the Wicomiss and thinking about Native history and thinking, I don't know if immigration policy that Native people had was like the best. It didn't always have the best outcome. But the idea was to adopt people in, to bring them in, to marry, bring them into your family, give them a new name. It's something that our society is grappling with a great deal. One of the pieces here, this is a portrait of a family by a Native artist, contemporary Native artist named Alfred Youngman, where you can just see a full range of color, a full range of shape in a family. But that idea, again, of family. A lot of intermarriage. Some friends of ours, and that she's a non-Native woman adopted into a Native family and brought in. So these are the ideas when you walk back out of here today. And maybe whenever you're walking, whatever landscape you're walking, or maybe just even reflecting on your interior landscape, to think about what can you know that's more than what you can actually see, that the imperceptible still matters, that even if something is lost, that it still has something to teach you. Just spend some time thinking about that and finding your place and acknowledging the rivers and opening your eyes to see who you are. Thank you.